Namaskar and welcome to Daily Global Insights, episode 289. Please like this program and help it reach its maximum potential. Today is Friday, December the 3rd, and here is what we are following around the world. Sridharji, Namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel. It's a great privilege to have you, sir. Who says that with the variants of COVID, complete vaccination is key to guard against death from COVID? Omicron could dominate and overwhelm the world in the next 3 to 6 months. Sir, dire warning from WHO.
The warning from WHO. Good morning to everybody, and good evening, good afternoon, and good day, wherever you are in the world. Yes, WHO dominates the Omicron, and WHO's press releases dominate the stories around the world. Yes, there's good news and the bad news. The good news is that the antibodies work. The good news is that the vaccines work. The good news is that it does spread faster. The bad news is we don't know whether it is, as because people traveling from one place to another, or whether this can mutate on its own. Because there has been an instance where somebody, at least two instances, where somebody who has not traveled anywhere seems to have contracted this specific virus. So yes, the dire warning, and winter in Europe and winter in United States doesn't help the case either.
The world steps up the fight against COVID variant Omicron as many nations detect the virus. Germany contemplates a complete shutdown. The Dutch say 14 passengers from a South Africa flight with Omicron were actually vaccinated. So we are seeing a fair amount of instances. Half the infections across Europe is expected to be from Omicron as infections spread. Again, it goes back to the core problem that we have been highlighting, Sridharji. They have to find out how this virus originated.
I think nobody wants to get to the source.
Right.
Nobody wants to get to the source. Nobody wants to make any attempts to address two specific areas. One is the origin and the source, and the second is the method of dissemination, because it's global. How can it is simultaneously global? It's not one or two countries. There's more than now 30 countries reporting this virus detection around. So it's obvious that all of them have not traveled either from South Africa or have not arrived from South African flights. And unfortunately, South Africa has borne the brunt as far as this specific, whether it is G Omicron or G Omicron or Omicron. But the word G has been taken out, and there's no pun intended, but it remains still a China virus. But nobody wants to get to the truth behind it. So we'll continue to navigate this process. Maybe in the next 5-6 years, we'll be getting more and more viruses and dealing with it the way we are dealing with it, unfortunately, without the political will to get to the bottom of it.
And China frets over Olympic headwinds as the Omicron spreads. And the WTA, the World Tennis Association, suspends tournaments in China over Peng Shuai situations, causing more headaches. Is she alive or not, Sridharji? What are your thoughts?
Based on what we have heard, is that she's alive. She's supposed to have given a video conference, and but the WTA has no holds of it. They're asking her to be to be accessible, and so she can exercise her free will and reveal to the world what exactly the issues that she is facing, rather than being behind the red curtain or the iron curtain, as they call it. So China has many problems to contend with, and this is another one that they have to contend with, which is most unwarranted. But does the world have the will to deal with this situation? The answer is once again no.
And the US South Korea eye broader Asia role while sprucing up North Korea plans. The United States reaffirms commitment to help Taiwan defend itself. Siddharji, there was a longish conversation that I had with Elmer Yuan about this, and according to him, he thinks that Taiwan, Japan, and Australia are well fortified as far as being able to tackle a submarine like attack from China, and he was not sure about how India's preparations are in this aspect, because he said that the whole AUKUS takeaway is that French technology in submarines perhaps is not the most advanced.
Uh, I don't want to, critique one versus the other, but I think respect the views of Mr. Elmer, with regard to, whether Japan and Taiwan and Australia are well fortified to deal with multi-pronged attack from China. Okay, China is not going to use just purely the submarines as a vehicle to attack. They're going to use a combination, including they have done drills in both in Taiwan as well. I mean, obviously Japan is not under consideration. Australia is not under consideration. Taiwan using even cruise liners to basically have PLA go in and physically land in the island, along with whatever they are doing with their air capability with into the intrusion zones. With regard to India, I think India is fairly well equipped because the area of confrontation is in a terrain which China is not that comfortable with, especially high altitude. They have been training, they have been upping their ante, and they have been making their own headway. The question that people have to ask is, are these PLA soldiers battle tested? Have they fought brutal battles against nations? What is the motivation if there is one child from one family and if hundreds and thousands of people perish? Has that been stress tested by China, and do we have public information? The answer is no. The fact is that even when they have 10 body bags, they get very offended. And if they have hundreds of thousands of people, especially in a hard fought battle in India, like in India, it remains a big question mark as to whether I think India is more than adequately prepared to deal with the issues, be it on land, be it on air, or be it physical combat when it comes to that. As far as the submarines are concerned, yes, probably India may not be as sophisticated but then they are being leasing at the same time. They have been building, and both United States and probably France will help India when it comes to, in the event of such an attack, either from Indian Ocean or from across the Malacca Strait.
And Laos conducted a Buddhist ceremony to bless the high-speed rail line that was built with 6 billion Chinese assistance. Economists have warned of adverse consequences. The high-speed line connects China's southeastern city of Kunming to Laos capital Vientiane. It traverses mountain ranges and water systems and reaches the tip of the Thai border. Sridharji, I think we have the map up now, so we can talk to that.
Yeah. Well, I think that the Laos inaugurated this, high-speed rail link with great fanfare, done at a cost of 6 billion. Most of it is lent by the Chinese. They own 75% or 70% stake in this, train establishment. Laos's economy is so small, it is not capable of handling this level of debt. So one can imagine the consequences. And now the more important thing here is, if we actually stretch the map, when look at the India's look east strategy, it almost in parallel overlaps with this specific initiative coming all the way into Thailand from down. That's one part of it. Then when you actually stretch to the east of Vientiane, then you are going into just crossing the Laos. You're the nation of Laos, the adjacent being Vietnam. you're going into South China Sea. So you can see that these high-speed rail links can be effectively used by the Chinese, and they can basically, hoodwink the Laos and send a whole PLA contingent using this high-speed rail link. It's almost pretty silly that they have gone ahead with this project. And then you actually look at the Kunming province and the adjacent, they're all big military bases of China.
And EU nations impose sanctions on Belarus Airlines Belavia in close coordination with the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada. The sanctions came into effect on Thursday. The sanctions were extended to judges, key officials, and included asset freezes. Sridharji, this is very interesting development. Now the EU is hitting back.
He was hitting back. I think they've chosen Belavia because that is the airline that was, the national airline of Belarus. They say that Belarus is quite intent and deliberately bringing these illegal refugees to use it as a bargaining chip, with Europe on various matters, including the sanctions. And hence, what they have chosen, the airline as the target. Apparently, there's about close to between 16 to 19 planes they lease from some of the European manufacturers. So it begs the question whether these leases will be renewed or the leases will be terminated, and what happens to those current leases. Should that happen, some of these airlines, some of these planes may not be able to fly. And they've also chosen some of the officials as well as asset freezes. That to me is not material. What is material is what's going to happen to these airline leases and what's going to happen to the flights originating and culminating in many places out of Belarus.
And Blinken confronts Russia's Lavrov, he is the foreign minister, on Ukraine and warns of severe costs. The US and Iran are pessimistic about reviving the Iran nuclear deal. Iran has no incentive either. Iran nuclear talks must be halted, says the Prime Minister of Israel, Bennett, to the Secretary of State, Blinken. Sridharji, so if this was doomed from the beginning, why was so much time and money and effort spent, sir?
I think that we go back to the foreign policy of the Biden administration versus the foreign policy of Trump. That's the prior president. We go back to the 2008-2016 foreign policy of Mr. Obama, and it was he who struck this deal in 2015. It is the reenactment of the deal was struck in somehow to legitimize the deal that was struck in 2015. They said we will open the door. Remember, there's also very strong pro-Iranian lobby groups within the United States who probably, to some extent, supported the cause of the Democrats getting back to power to see whether you can restore and bring it mainstream. That's the only logical reason one can think of. And given the weakness that United States is demonstrating, Iran has been more belligerent and assertive, be it on negotiations or in terms of their enrichment or in complying with the sanctions. They have not been compliant with the sanctions, and China has been a very able and willing ally. So when you put all these things together, Mr. Bennett was right when he landed here. He said, conducting negotiations with Iran is counterproductive. You must have deterrent procedures. If United States doesn't, Israel will act on its own. But Mr. Biden politely told him and sent him back to say we will have, an option, another alternative option should Iran continue its present course. Lo and behold, that's exactly the course they have pursued.
I beg your pardon, sir. I had to take a drink of water. Israel defense minister is to fly to Washington to hold discussions with his counterpart and says that there may come a time when Israel must act and act on its own. That's what we just covered. Mossad recruited as many as 10 nuclear scientists who agreed to destroy the centrifuge facilities in the central hall at the Natanz nuclear facility in Iran in April, according to a published report. I think we touched upon this in one of our DGI episodes, sir.
we touched upon this. Now it is coming to light that there were people from inside were involved, and it looks like Mossad had used them. So the accident that occurred in that facility, is now something that seems like an act which was indirectly or directly influenced from the shores of Israel. So it just tells you the audacity as well as the ability of Israel to act as needed and as appropriate to make sure that the deterrence is maintained.
India will have 9 nuclear reactors by 2024, and a nuclear project, the first in northern India, will come up about 150 kilometers away from Delhi in Haryana's Gorakhpur. And the Indian government is going to support the electronic service achieve their commitment of 300 billion revenue by 2025-26, says the Electronics and IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav. Siddharji, your comments on India's pushing further with nuclear-based power generation, sir.
Well, I think that nuclear power has met India's needs, and it has maintained the safeguards. What is working for it, it is going to continue to expand. So I think from that perspective, there are no questions raised from the global institutions which monitor such installations originating from the nuclear side. Is more around the coal. So I think India is quite clearly demonstrating that it is not reneging on its nuclear power facilities. So which is pretty good, because it's something that they have done. Remember, Japan has nuclear power stations. Russia has, China has, United States has several nuclear power stations. Australia has, etc. So I think that that it augurs well that India maintains the safeguards, but at the same time an effective and efficient power supply. As far as the electronics is concerned, it is extremely laudable, because both on the, you remember, the Tatas was committing investment into the fab. So here this is around all the adjacent electronic circuit boards which are required for the manufacture of consumer electronics, and the government seems committed to augment and provide the support to make sure that these are manufactured locally, including the spare parts, with an intent to remove the need for imports, but at the same time do it at a much lower cost.
The Munsiari Milam roadwork is expected to be completed by 2023, and this would enable vehicles to reach the last security post in the Indo-China border. This is in which section of the LAC, Sridharji?
Uttarakhand.
Okay.
In Uttarakhand. You remember that there's been recent incursions in the Uttarakhand area that people came in and left.
Yes.
So this particular segment, we don't have the map. This particular segment, if one takes a look at the map, gets very close to the line of actual control. And this segment is the last piece where there is lack of infrastructure from a transportation point of view. Once this road is complete, apparently the Indian armed forces will have the ability, from a mobility point of view, very rapidly travel and get as close to the last checkpost before the LAC.
And Minister for External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, has asserted that state of mind will determine state of relationship with China and status on the border. And India detects 2 more cases of Omicron in India. Sridharji, first off, the MEA statement, state of mind versus something. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that, sir. What is it trying to convey?
Very simple. Does India want to have peace? Does China want to have peace? What is its state of mind? Is it aggression? Is it incursion? So if its state of mind is not about sitting across the table and negotiating and having an amicable resolution to the matter, and if it has surreptitious intentions, then those intentions get translated by way of actions that you see across the border. He couldn't have been, subtle at the same time, direct in saying, so you want to judge what China's intent is? Well, you can see what China's intent is. They have been building up and they have reneged after several meetings on the withdrawal which they agreed to, and they've leveraged that position. So what's the state of mind? The state of mind is aggression, change the status quo, and possess as much as possible and grab as much as possible, and threaten. I think that is what he's trying to imply. So therefore, I can go on negotiating, but what's the state? What is the state of mind? The state of mind is not peace, not agreed negotiating conditions, and that's what you're seeing by way of actions.
I'm looking forward to a day when India goes back and gets all the territory that these guys have walked into, and then sit down the following morning for talks, saying that, okay, let us negotiate.
Yes. I think that we were speaking before the show. One of the days we will do a strategic map of this area stretching from Uttarakhand and all the way. I think people have to look at why from a uh, what I call as the cultural as well as the historic and from a Puranic standpoint of view, why those areas are of such strategic historical significance, if you want to use the word, the land of Bharat. I think people, I don't know, they can comprehend why that area is significant. It goes to the core identity of what Bharat is.
And Democrats reached deal to fund government till February. Senate then passed the bill after leaders tamped down the efforts of a few GOP leaders and sent it to the president. So for now, it's going to the government is going to stay open. The legislation will keep the government from running through February. So essentially, they have kicked the can down the road, isn't it, Sridharji?
They kicked the can down the road, and I think the Republicans wanted time window to assess the overall plan. They didn't have the time window. For that reason, when you say the overall plan, this is a $1.75 trillion budget, the measurement of the tax, which will offset the deficit, the outlays that was allocated. We talked about the $550 billion in the climate and $440 billion of which is in the various benefit programs and all other kinds of things. That's why they passed the infrastructure stimulus bill of that 560 or $1.2 trillion bill. They put this $1.76 billion in the back burner because it also had amnesty to close to 4 million illegal aliens or illegal migrants sitting in the United States. So they have deferred that. They didn't want the debt extension to be debt limit to be a hangover, because effectively from today, United States will not be able to repay the debt if the ceiling is not lifted. So I think they've done a compromise, but giving themselves time to look at it, barring about 28 Republicans who are steadfast to add a condition, which is namely remove the vaccine mandates as part of it, which I think a good number of Republicans declined, including Mitch McConnell, and they allowed this to get through, and the bill will be passed, and there will not be a shutdown.
And Biden vows no more lockdowns and no further vaccine mandates as he pushes vaccines in winter COVID-19 plan. And as far as the number of different SOPs are concerned, Sridharji, you and I did one program, I think first or second in stimulus from Biden administration. We did one program. After that, a few more stimuli packages have come along. I don't know if we can go back and do another updated program where we can say, okay, this is the burden that is being placed on the backs of the young generation of the United States.
Let's do it next Saturday,
Yeah.
because we can reserve for next Saturday. So we have next Saturday, we can do a program on the stimulus update that includes because the tapering is also going to kick in. How much was the Fed buyback that was done, how much of the 6.5 trillion plus the 950 billion. Those were the two programs. The 6.5 was a combination of Trump programs with the Biden, then the 1 trillion program of Biden that kicked in. Then we had the new 1.2 trillion or 1.1 trillion that is kicking in. So we can do all of that because the debt limit will now be close to $31 trillion without accounting for this new 1.76 trillion that is being accommodated. So we can do a program which is to see where this money has gone. Remember, we covered a couple of programs ago the fraud around this, especially around the COVID stimulus as it relates to the disbursement of the 500 or 550 billion dollars plus that was sent, and good chunk of money seems to have gone overseas to the hackers and others. Good chunk of money has gone to people who are not qualified to receive that money. So we can touch some of those things when we cover the program. Yes.
Absolutely, sir. Every time I see or read the stimulus package, I go back and search my pockets, and every time the result is the same: empty pockets.
Well,
After much ado, US to start Trump's remain in Mexico border policy if Mexico agrees to conditions. I wonder what the conditions are, Sridharji.
I think that they will revise the conditions, which is namely to say, test vaccines, provide conditions, and make sure that they are trackable, traceable, and on call when they should be. So they will make it into a program which is almost like a temporary shelter that Mexico needs to support. I very much doubt that Mexico will support such an effort. Whereas Trump basically said, hey, you want to keep them, you keep them. But if you don't want to keep them and send them back to Guatemala or Ecuador, you please send them back. So I think that Trump's policy was, far more discretionary in terms of what Mexico is prepared to do rather than mandating Mexico to meet conditions.
And viewers, again, I'm going to shamelessly pitch my book because this talks about what we just talked about, the illegal migration, as well as the next item that is coming up. Senator Marco Rubio ups the ante on China and New York Times and says that the New York Times covered up proof that Xi Jinping personally ordered Uyghur genocide. Schumer calls Rubio amendment to ban Uyghur slave labor made from imports from China a poison pill. Sridharji, what is this? Poison pill, no poison pill? It is a known fact that this is exactly what is happening. I mean, in PGurus channel, we've had 2 or 3 subject matter experts who have come and related the horror stories that are happening. And again, viewers, if you want to know more about it, get my book. You can buy the ebook or the book. You don't have to read the entirety. There are only some sections. You can search on Uyghur and then you can find out the reality there.
Well, I think that Rubio wanted to add a condition, which is effectively to say that, ban all materials that are coming from Uyghur, where we know that it is slave labor. Of course, Mr. Schumer gets very upset to add these conditions, which is emotionally sensitive and could create a ruffle. It's interesting, some of his colleagues may be involved, or some of his colleagues, according to some alleged reports, that some of the colleagues may have some business interest in that specific region. But more pertinent point Rubio is making is that how come New York Times, which knew the facts, chose not to suppress? Is it because they have sympathy towards fellow comrades, or their sympathy towards generally these fascist communist regimes? That is the specific point that he is making, and is very candid about in his assertions.
And some colleagues whose names may begin with the letter J and whose last names may end with the letter Y may be the ones who might be interested in this. Who knows? Let's see. Next, I think I'd like to speak a little bit about what happened in the markets. Siddhaji, there's a fair amount of vibrations up and down because of the Omicron virus. now we are beginning to find out that, at least in several cases in South Africa, if people just take home and stay at home and take rest, and after 2 weeks time they sort of get out of it. So I guess it is a bit of a ruffling of feathers right now. What are your thoughts, sir? Why are markets still reacting so violently?
I think markets are reacting for two things, two essential. One is that um, the shutdown always causes concern in the minds of the people. Uncertainty in terms of the dissemination of the news causes in the minds of the people. That's what led to the sell off in the markets. Also, during this period, the liquidity in the markets post the holiday season is very, very modest. So you may see some people taking money off the table, and any adverse only accelerates the amount of sale that occurs. Then they say, I sold too much, and then I get back into the market. Then people say, okay, this can be addressed, this can be dealt with, and then you see the market gyration back up. So that's one factor. The second factor is that there was a very interesting statement from Fed, which is namely, especially the Fed governor, Mr. Jerome Powell, Dr. Jerome Powell, that the inflation is likely to be here, and they may have to address it without going into saying that there is going to be definitive hikes. So that also created some uncertainty and people to do profit taking, and that's where you saw. So then the bargain hunters came, and the market is back up. So we may continue to see a little bit of these gyrations in December, but again, to repeat, the markets are already ahead. We have given enough data. We will give you one more data around December 15th or 16th or 20th. The other two variables which are very important to look at it within the context of the markets is the oil prices. They're back below the $70 a barrel. Also, OPEC has agreed to increase the supply, so which also augurs well. And the interest rate, the 10-year T-bonds are well below now 1.5. They're around 1.43, 1.45. Remember, they went up to 1.65, 1.67. Those are all parameters which indicate to you the markets are reacting to the sentiments. But we will know more about what happens in the first quarter next year. As far as 2021 is concerned, I think we'll finish with S&P being 20% plus. Dow and Nasdaq, in the 15 to 20% range, as we have been saying. So that's again from our perspective, it's a fairly stellar year. The cryptos just dipped below 60,000, especially the Bitcoin. Ethereum is around 4,400, 4,500. In my view, okay, if I miss 60,000, then I accept it. If I miss 75,000, I accept it. But we'll probably inch past the 60,000 as we get close to the end of the year. 75 could be a stretch, but 60,000, yes.
And with that, our DGI episode 289 comes to an end. Do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And also, those of you who are watching this on Facebook, do consider joining our subscription. Your subscription is being matched by Facebook till the end of this year, and that would help us get some easy money, as I like to think of it, because they are giving us matching then and plus then more. And I'd like every one of you who are watching this on Facebook to join this subscription. You don't have to keep subscribing. You can do it for a month and log off, but at least you would have helped PGurus in an immense way. Thanks once again, Sridharji. We'll be back until the next episode. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful Friday. Have a wonderful evening. And we look forward to seeing you shortly.